This is StoryLink Radio. The professional storytellers at StoryLink Radio have been around for a long time. The Irish knew storytellers by the name Shawnee. We are committed to bringing stories to life through the spoken word as in traditional oral storytelling. We present stories of many genres: ancient myths and legends, short stories, full-length novels, science fiction, high fantasy, philosophy, traditions, classics, drama, fiction, non-fiction, romance, theater, ghosts and haunts, stories of the strange, and much, much more. Our stories may be drawn from contemporary sources or from some dusty, near-forgotten tome. Regardless, it is a treat like no other to listen to stories and tales presented in a live format with the emotion and feeling a true professional storyteller brings, conjuring up images of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy. So join us at StoryLink Radio and let us be your Shawnee for a time. Our stories are presented before a live audience, then recorded for the StoryLink Radio podcast for your on-demand listening pleasure. Please visit StoryLinkRadio.com for show notes, to find out how to join our live audience, and for lots of free stuff, including free audiobooks and much more. Visit www.storylinkradio.com. This is The Spectre by Guy de Maupassant. One day as I was walking, I met a friend I had not seen in years, and he told me of the misfortune which had shattered his life. Having fallen madly in love with a young girl, he had married her. But after a year more than earthly happiness, she died suddenly of an affection of the heart. He left his country home on the very day of her burial and came here to the city where he lived now alone and unhappy, sad and wretched. I promised to do him a slight favor, he asked, to go to his country home and get out of the desk in his bedroom, their bedroom, some papers of which he had urgent need. For nothing on earth, he said, would induce him to re-enter that house. He gave me the key to the room which he himself had locked on leaving. He explained to me exactly what I had to do. It was very simple. I must take 2 packages of letters and a roll of papers from the first right-hand drawer of the desk. I took leave of him to accomplish my mission. It was simply the matter of a ride which I could make in an hour on horseback, his country property being but a few miles distant from the city. The manor looked as if it had been abandoned for 20 years. The open gate was falling from its hinges. The walks were overgrown with grass, and the flower beds were no longer distinguishable. The noise I made by kicking at a shutter brought out an old man from a side door. He seemed stunned with astonishment at seeing me. "Then you are going into her room? But it's not been opened since the death. If you will be kind enough to wait 5 minutes, I will go and see if—" I interrupted him angrily, and he no longer objected. Pushing him aside, I went into the house. I first went through the kitchen, then 2 rooms occupied by this man and wife. I then crossed a large hall. I mounted a staircase, and I recognized the door described by my friend. I easily opened it, and I entered the apartment. It was so dark that at first I could distinguish nothing. I stopped short, disagreeably affected by that disagreeable, musty odor of closed, unoccupied rooms. As my eyes slowly became accustomed to the darkness, I saw plainly enough a large and disordered bedroom, the bed without sheets, but still retaining its mattresses and pillows, on one of which was a deep impression, as though an elbow or a head had recently rested there. The chairs all seemed out of place. I noticed that the door of a closet had remained half open. I first went to the window, which I opened to let in the light, but the fastenings of the shutters had grown so rusty I could not move them. I even tried to break them with my sword, but without success. As I was growing irritated over my useless efforts and could now see fairly well in the semi-darkness, I gave up hope of getting more light, and I went over to the writing desk. I seated myself in an armchair, and letting down the lid of the desk, I opened the drawer designated. It was full to the top. I needed but 3 packages, which I knew how to recognize, and I began searching for them. I was straining my eyes in the effort to read the superscriptions when I seemed to hear, or rather feel, something rustle in back of me. I paid no attention, believing that a draft from the window was moving some drapery, but in a minute or so another movement, almost imperceptible, sent a strangely disagreeable little shiver over my skin. I was so stupid to be affected, even slightly, that self-respect prevented my turning around. I had just found the second package I needed and was about to lay my hand on the third when a long, painful sigh uttered just at my shoulder. made me bound like a madman from my seat and land several feet off. As I jumped, I had turned around my hand on the hilt of my sword, and truly, if I had not felt it at my side, I should have taken to my heels like a coward. A tall woman, dressed in white, stood gazing at me from the back of the chair where I had been sitting an instant before. Such a shudder ran through all my limbs that I nearly fell backward. No one who has not experienced it can understand that frightful, unreasoning terror. The mind becomes vague, the heart ceases to beat, the entire body grows as limp as a sponge. Now, I do not believe in ghosts. Nevertheless, I collapsed from a hideous dread of the dead, and I suffered in a few moments more than in all the rest of my life from the irresistible terror of the supernatural. If she had not spoken, I should have died, perhaps. But she spoke. She spoke in a sweet, sad voice that set my nerves vibrating. I dare not say that I became master of myself and recovered my reason. No, I was terrified and scarcely knew what I was doing, but a certain innate pride, a remnant of soldierly instinct, made me, almost in spite of myself, maintain a bold front. And she said, "Oh, sir, if you can render me a great service." I wanted to reply, but it was impossible for me to pronounce a word. Only a vague sound came from my throat, and she continued, "Will you? You can save me, cure me. I suffer frightfully. I suffer. Oh, how I suffer." And she slowly seated herself in my armchair, still looking at me. "Will you?" I nodded my assent, my voice still being paralyzed. Then she held out to me a tortoiseshell comb and murmured, "Comb my hair. Oh, comb my hair. That will cure me. It must be combed. Look at my head, how I suffer. My hair pulls so." Her hair, unbound, very long and very black, it seemed to me, hung over the back of the armchair and touched the floor. Why did I promise? Why did I take that comb with a shudder? And why did I hold in my hands her long black hair that gave my skin a frightful cold sensation as though I were handling snakes? And I cannot tell. That sensation has remained in my fingers, and I still tremble in recalling it. I combed her hair. I handled, I know not how, those icy locks. I twisted, knotted, unknotted, and braided them. She sighed, bowed her head, and seemed happy. Suddenly she said, "Thank you," and snatched the comb from my hands and fled to the closet door that I had noticed ajar. Left alone, I experienced for several seconds the horrible agitation of one who awakens from a nightmare. At length, I regained my senses. I ran to the window with a mighty effort. I burst open the shutters, letting a flood of light into the room. Immediately, I sprang to the door by which that being had departed. I found it closed and utterly immovable. Then the mad desire to flee overcame me like a panic, the panic which soldiers know in battle. I seized the 3 packets of letters on the open desk. I ran from the room. I dashed down the stairs, 4 steps at a time. I found myself outside, I know not how, and perceiving my horse a few steps away, I dashed past George, the terrible caretaker, and leaped into the saddle and galloped away. I stopped only when I reached my lodgings, throwing the reins to my orderly. I fled to my room, and I shut myself in to reflect. For an hour, I anxiously asked myself if I were not the victim of a hallucination. Undoubtedly, I had had one of those incomprehensible nervous attacks, those exaltations of mind that give rise to visions and are the stronghold of the supernatural. And I was about to believe I had seen a vision, that I had had a hallucination. When I approached the window, my eyes fell by chance upon my own breast. My cape was covered with long black hairs. Let's guide him up passant the Spectre. Thank you for listening to StoryLink Radio. If you like what you've just heard, we hope you will subscribe to our podcast and pass along our web address, www.storylinkradio.com. Be sure to visit our website for show notes, to find out how to join our live audience, and for lots of free stuff, including free audiobooks and much more. Join us next time for another story from StoryLink Radio.